Hey everyone, Wayne Fox here. I thought I'd do another video in my Gone But Not Forgotten series about one of my personal favorite images. Maybe a little background before I get started. When I began transitioning from a portrait-based photographer to more of a landscape photographer around 2003, 2004, I was probably only intimately familiar with the work of three landscape photographers. Michael Fatali and Thomas Mangelson both had galleries in Park City. Now that's just a short drive from me. There's some great restaurants and some good golf courses. So when I was there, I'd always pop into their galleries and view their work up close. Fatali has a rather sordid reputation from a couple of rather dumb stunts he's done over the years, but his images are really wonderful to view in person. He's a little old school. Most images are taken with 4x5 or 8x10 film. And for many years, his prints were on Cibachrome, which was a fantastic print media that's now lost to history. You really have to see a Cibachrome print in person to appreciate it. Now, fortunately, many current medias and mounting techniques, such as acrylic face mounting, are pretty close to a similar experience. Thomas Mangelson is primarily known for his incredible wildlife work, something I found out pretty early on I didn't have the patience for. But his landscape work is also fantastic, and I always spend time in his galleries when I can. I think I've been to three of them, one in La Jolla, California, Jackson Hole, and of course the one in Park City. The third one was none other than Peter Lick. You can't help but run into one of his galleries if you travel a little bit. I've been in his gallery in Lahaina, which unfortunately was lost in the recent tragic fire that destroyed most of that town. And no trip to Vegas isn't complete without walking through one of the casino malls where his galleries are located. And I do usually walk through his galleries to view his work. As I said, these are the only three I was intimately familiar with. And although I'd seen work from lots of other photographers, I really didn't relate the work to an actual individual. So I kind of started searching the internet for different photographers specializing in landscape work, trying to get some inspiration, some ideas, trying to understand techniques, composition, color, use of color, things like that. And in this process, I think there were three photographers I found which I believe had the most influence on me as I began to shoot and experiment more with landscape photography. One was Charles Cramer. I just love his simplicity, just the soft nature of his work, and his style was really pleasing to me. Something I felt like I wouldn't mind emulating a little, nothing ever over the top. Another one that was similar to him was William Neill. I've actually purchased several of his books and really enjoy his style of photography as well. And his essays are really interesting to read. And the third one was Rodney Lough Jr. His images seemed particularly appealing to me. And when he opened a gallery in Las Vegas, I would visit it whenever I was in town just to see his work in person. Again, sort of an old school photographer. Many of his images are 8x10 film, but he has embraced digital capture and production, and the end result is pretty stunning, especially in person. He did open a gallery in Park City for a while, and one of the images he had on display there was this one. When I first saw this piece in person, I was really taken back. The simplicity, the beauty, the serene nature of the composition, sort of symmetrical and yet not. Very peaceful. And I put this location on my bucket list as someplace I would like to actually shoot sometime. Today's image in this series is from this location, the Boardman Tree Farm, about 2.5 hours east of Portland, Oregon. I did attend a Rodney Lough workshop in May of 2013, and he's got quite a personality. He's fun to be with. I enjoyed the workshop. The main thing that I brought out of it was why he shoots the cameras that he does. He uses a technical camera, and at that point, I decided I would give it another try. I tried it earlier with an Alpha system and didn't really enjoy the experience. But after watching him work, I kind of learned a few things about how to use it a little more effectively. And a lot of my images now were taken with that type of system. The other thing he does a lot of is stitches images. And the reason I bring this up is because the image I'm going to show in a minute, both of those things come into play. But he likes to stitch his images to make sure he gets plenty of resolution. He does sell really large prints. And I've always been of the feeling you can't really sell a large print if you don't have enough quality to print it large. You can always make a small print from a file that's too big, but you can't always make a big print from a file that's too small. Personal philosophy. Anyway, back to the image. I like images that invoke emotions or calmness. I believe that a great image always evokes some type of an emotional response with the viewer, and this image really seemed to have those elements. I had no idea where he took it, and stupid me, I didn't think to ask while I was at that workshop. As it happens, the following October of 2013, I decided to drive to Portland to shoot the Portland Japanese Garden and perhaps some other locations along the Columbia River Gorge, and I stumbled across the Boardman tree farm near Boardman, Oregon. I was really shocked. I was going to research it for a future trip. I had no idea that it was in Oregon. So on my way home, I decided to hit the tree farm at a decent time of day and be able to spend a couple of hours roaming around, shooting different scenes. This tree farm was massive, some 25,000 acres, containing millions of poplar trees. They were grown in various sections in these perfect rows, and they would harvest them on a 12-year cycle for the wood, which I think they use for lumber, as well as paper pulp or pulp for paper. There were access roads and paths separating the sections, so I was able to roam around looking for trees that were most appealing based on their age and height and color. Poplar trees in the fall are really pretty. They kind of have a whitish trunk with these beautiful gold leaves, not unlike aspen trees. And I got lucky in that the leaves were pretty much at their peak when I was there. The whole experience of wandering around, the aroma, there was a little bit of a soft rain that had occurred earlier the day. It was really a cool experience. Here's my favorite image from those I took, which is a 7-shot stitch with a phase 1 80 megapixel back on my Arca Swiss. I talked about that technique I'd gotten from Rodney Lough a few minutes ago. This had been my primary system since his workshop. I'm pretty sure I was using the Rodenstock 70mm for this, and one advantage of the technical cameras is the amazing glass that you can put in front of the sensor. I was really happy with how this turned out. The light was a little overcast that day and a little soft, but there was enough sunlight slipping through to give those leaves an extra little saturation pop from the backlight effect of the sun. Not too harsh, but not too soft. Unfortunately, you can't take this image anymore. So what happened? Well, when I made the same trip in 2017, there were still some trees along the freeway, but it was apparent something was different. Unlike before, there weren't miles of roads meandering through the trees, more like a few small patches near the road. In 2016, interesting, that was the same year of the Metlaco Falls collapse in my last video, this tree farm was sold and the trees were cut down to make room for dairy as well as potato farms. I'm assuming that shortly after that trip, the remaining trees were cut down, and at this point, I think there are no more trees left. I actually did find one internet reference that had an update on the top of their page about this tree farm that said all the trees were now gone, even though there wasn't a date, so I don't know when that happened. While this wasn't a natural grove of trees, photographically it was stunning to shoot, and I'm really glad I was able to capture some images before it was removed. I certainly would have enjoyed visiting there again, as would many, and when I was there was only a couple of other people, so the experience of the quiet and solitude, the soft aroma, as I mentioned, that was really satisfying. I did do some research, and there seems to be a possible alternative location that might offer some similar views. It's called a Chehalis or Chehalis, I don't know how you pronounce that, tree farm near Chehalis, Washington. I think it's about an hour and a half north of Portland. While not as large, it does offer similarly planted groves of poplar trees. Unfortunately, you can only photograph trees from the fence line, as visitors are not allowed in the property. And another issue I've heard is they have several types of poplars, and they seem to turn gold at different times of the year, at different parts of the fall. One person said they were there when some of the trees were already bare and others hadn't even started to change. If you want to give this location a try, some serious research might be useful so you can time the fall colors. As I mentioned, it's about an hour and a half north of Portland and a few miles west of Chehalis. I hope I'm saying that right, on Highway 6. I've been showing some Google Street views of this tree farm, and I think you can see these trees are quite mature. And when they get mature, they get a little bit bunched up and a lot of limbs coming out the sides. And one thing I remember about the Boardman tree farm is they must have been trimmed the limbs that were growing out the side because the trunks were pretty bare except for the top. And I assume they did that because it made the lumber a little bit more less knotted and a little bit harder. Now, if you do an internet search for the Boardman tree farm, you'll see dozens of images of this tree farm, really awesome images. And if you do the same thing for the Chehalis one, you won't really see much like that. So it might offer some nice possibilities. It might be worth it checking out. I might actually try, but unfortunately, the wonderful images taken at the Boardman Tree Farm are now lost to history, and all we have left are great photographs taken by many, many photographers over the years. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making this one. As I mentioned, this is one of my favorite images I've ever taken. I have a few more that I'm planning on doing, one or two that are by photographers other than myself, locations that I never had the opportunity to shoot because they were gone before I got into landscape photography. If you've got a location like that, as I mentioned before, let me know. I'd love to do some research on it. Anyway, hey, appreciate you watching. Make sure you hit the like button and maybe recommend this to your buddies if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, see ya.